She said yes. To coffee. To his capo. And Maxwell Ford, Mafia Boss, billionaire, man who controlled 6 city blocks through calculated ruthlessness, wanted to commit murder over a beverage. The text came at 2:47 p.m. Jordan's hand jerked like she'd been shocked. Maxwell watched from his office window. Bryce Knight's name on her screen. Coffee? My treat. 3 p.m. Simple. Casual. Catastrophic. Because Jordan was his. Not officially. Not legally. Not in any way Maxwell could defend without sounding obsessed. But she brought him coffee every morning at exactly 7:15. Knew he preferred scotch after difficult calls. Reorganized his schedule to create reasons to see him. 18 months of professional perfection that masked something Maxwell had been trying desperately to ignore. She wanted him too. And now Bryce, his second in command, his trusted associate, was making a move. But what he didn't know was that someone was watching. Jordan typed a response. Her cheeks flushed pink. That specific shade, that meant male attention. Maxwell's jaw locked. His phone was in his hand. Security on speed dial. One call away from having Bryce removed, relocated, eliminated from the equation. But he couldn't. Because Jordan wasn't his possession. Wasn't his property. Wasn't his in any way that justified the violence building in his chest. Except she felt like his. God. She felt like his. And watching her accept coffee with another man felt like being gutted. She hit send. 3:30. 1 hour max. Maxwell's control shattered. Not externally, he was too disciplined for that. But internally, where it mattered, where Jordan had somehow infiltrated despite every wall he'd built, internally, he exploded. If you've ever felt invisible, been told you take up too much space, or had someone make you feel like you're too much or not enough, this story is for you. Hit that subscribe button right now and comment where you're watching from. We're building a family of people who refuse to shrink anymore. And 3 days later, he'd fire Bryce Knight. Move Jordan from staff quarters to his bedroom. Claim her publicly in front of his entire organization. Stake his reputation on her. Gamble everything on them. But right now, in this moment, watching her accept coffee with his capo, Maxwell Ford understood something devastating. He'd spent 18 months trying not to love her, and he'd failed completely. What happened next changed everything. But this wasn't even the most shocking part. The phone vibrated on the granite kitchen counter, that small earthquake that only 2 people in the mansion really understood. Jordan Gray had been filling a crystal pitcher with ice water, preparing Maxwell's afternoon refreshments, when the buzz cut through the pristine silence. She froze mid-motion. From his glass-walled office upstairs, Maxwell Ford watched that freeze with the intensity of a predator recognizing prey behavior. He'd been reviewing surveillance feeds when he caught the movement in his peripheral vision, or rather, the lack of movement. Jordan, efficient, precise, Jordan who never hesitated, had gone completely still. That moment, everything in the room changed. His focus slipped. The surveillance reports, the accountant on the phone, the strategic planning for next quarter, all of it faded behind a sharper thought. Who the hell is texting my maid? The phone buzzed again. 2 short pulses. Insistent. Familiar. Jordan's shoulders tensed in that particular way that meant personal communication, not work. Something that mattered. Something that made her nervous. He couldn't explain why, but danger was closing in. Maxwell ended his call mid-sentence. His accountant would understand later. Or he wouldn't. Maxwell suddenly didn't care about anything except the small figure in his kitchen, one hand still holding that crystal pitcher, the other reaching for a phone with fingers that trembled slightly. She picked it up. Read the screen. And Maxwell watched from 40 feet away, through glass walls, across the careful distance he'd maintained for 18 months, he watched Jordan Gray's face transform. Not fear. Not concern. Not the professional mask she wore for household emergencies. Surprise. Then, interest. The kind of interest that made her bite her lower lip, made her glance over her shoulder as if checking whether anyone was watching, made her cheeks flush that specific shade of pink that Maxwell had learned meant only one thing: male attention. Someone was pursuing her, and she was considering saying yes. But there was one thing he didn't know about his closest ally. She unlocked the screen. Bryce Knight. Coffee? My treat. 3 p.m. today. That place on 5th you mentioned. Her stomach did a full flip, he remembered. He'd remembered a casual comment she'd made 3 weeks ago about a coffee shop near her old neighborhood. The kind of detail that meant he'd been paying attention. The kind of attention that felt dangerous in this house. She typed a response with trembling fingers, then deleted it. Tried again. Jordan. I'm working. 3 dots appeared immediately. He was waiting for her response. The realization made her chest tight. Bryce Knight. You get a break. Don't you? 1 hour. I'll have you back before Maxwell even notices you're gone. What she said next shattered his trust instantly. The casual use of Maxwell's first name without Mr. Ford, without the boss, set off alarm bells. Bryce knew exactly what he was doing. This wasn't just coffee. This was a test, a boundary being pushed. From upstairs, Maxwell's jaw locked. He couldn't see the phone screen from this distance, but he didn't need to. He could read Jordan's body language like he read financial reports. Every micro-expression, every subtle shift in posture told him exactly what he needed to know. Someone was making her nervous. Someone was making her flustered. And the way her shoulders tensed, the way her cheeks warmed with that barely visible pink flush that told him the message wasn't from her sister or her landlord or any other benign contact. That was the body language of a woman receiving attention from a man. In that moment, the entire balance of power flipped. Maxwell had controlled the Ford empire for 8 years. He had negotiated with men who threatened his territory, eliminated rivals who challenged his authority, and maintained absolute power through calculated intelligence and strategic ruthlessness. There was very little in this world that rattled him, but seeing Jordan's reaction to that text, whoever had sent it, that did something to him that he did not have a name for. He stepped back from the window before she could sense him watching, fingers curling into fists at his sides. He should not care. She was his maid, his household manager, efficient, professional, the invisible infrastructure that kept his domestic life running smoothly. She coordinated staff, managed his personal schedule, ensured his home functioned with the precision his business empire demanded. She was not his. Not officially, not in any way that anyone could write down on paper, but she felt like his. For the first time, he wasn't in control. Downstairs, Jordan bit her lower lip and typed a response before she could overthink it. Jordan, 3:30. 1 hour max. She hit send and immediately regretted it. Her heart hammered against her ribs like it was trying to escape. This was a mistake. This violated every unwritten rule of the Ford household. Be professional. Stay invisible. Never give anyone ammunition to question your position here. But God, she was so tired of being invisible. So tired of watching Maxwell Ford move through his life with perfect control while she existed in the margins, carrying water pitchers and scheduling appointments and pretending she didn't count the minutes until he came home each evening. Maybe Bryce Knight, seeing her as something other than Ford's maid, was exactly what she needed. Her phone buzzed again. Bryce. Knight. See you then. Wear something other than the uniform. You're not working when you're with me. The implication in that last sentence made her stomach drop and her pulse spike simultaneously. When you're with me. As if there would be multiple times. As if this was the beginning of something rather than a one-time courtesy coffee between colleagues. There was one detail everyone missed. She set the phone down with shaking hands and turned back to the pitcher, only to find Maxwell Ford standing in the kitchen doorway, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. Her breath caught. He had changed from earlier. Now he wore a dark charcoal suit without the jacket, white shirt with sleeves rolled to his forearms, the top 2 buttons undone. He looked casual, but she knew better. There was a certain stiffness in his shoulders, a tension in his jaw that gave him away. You have plans this afternoon, he said, not a question. Yes. Her voice came out thinner than she wanted. I requested time off. For 3:30. I approved it, he said. I remember. Of course he did. He had seen the request come through the household management system that morning and had signed off without comment. At the time, it had been routine. Jordan occasionally took personal time, always with appropriate notice, always professionally handled, but that was before he'd watched her receive that text, before he'd seen that flush in her cheeks and that nervous energy that meant this wasn't a dental appointment or an errand. He knew something that no one else in the building did. Coffee, he said, his voice deceptively calm. With Bryce. Jordan's eyes widened. How did you... I know everything that happens in this house, Jordan. He took 3 steps into the kitchen, closing the distance but maintaining enough space to seem non-threatening. Every phone call, every text message that comes through the household Wi-Fi network, every person who shows up at my gate. His voice dropped lower. Every time my capo decides to ask my maid out for coffee. The possessive emphasis on my was so subtle she almost missed it. Almost. It's just coffee, she said, hating how defensive she sounded. Bryce is. He's been kind to me. He treats me like a person, not just staff. You thought what? Maxwell interrupted, his control starting to fracture at the edges. That having coffee with my second-in-command was a harmless social engagement? That Bryce Knight does anything without calculating every angle? One wrong move, and everything would fall apart. He moved closer, not touching her, but close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and subtle that she'd memorized months ago. Let me tell you what Bryce calculated, Jordan. He calculated that you're the one person in this house I trust with my schedule, my security codes, my private communications. He calculated that if he can get close to you, he gets access to information about me that no amount of money or leverage could buy. He calculated, that's not what this is, Jordan said, her voice stronger now, anger cutting through fear. Maybe Bryce just wants to have coffee with me because he actually sees me as something other than a tool or a security risk. Maybe he's interested in me as a person, which is apparently a revolutionary concept in this house. The words hung in the air between them like a grenade with the pin pulled. Maxwell's eyes went dark. Not with anger, with something far more dangerous. He sees you, Maxwell repeated, his voice dropping to something barely above a whisper. And what exactly does he see, Jordan? She couldn't answer. Couldn't breathe. The intensity of his gaze pinned her in place more effectively than if he'd physically grabbed her. Her next words hit him harder than any bullet. Because I see you, Maxwell continued, taking one more step forward, eliminating the professional distance entirely. I see you every morning when you bring my coffee before I've asked for it. I see you every time you anticipate what I need before I need it. I see you managing this entire household with more competence than most of my executives show running million-dollar divisions. His hand came up, almost touching her face, but stopping just short. I see you, Jordan. Every goddamn day. The question is, do you see me? Her phone buzzed on the counter behind her. Another text from Bryce, probably confirming details for their coffee date. The sound broke the moment like shattering glass. And then, the gun clicked. Maxwell's expression shuddered. The vulnerability that had cracked through his control disappeared behind the ice-cold mask she knew so well. Go, he said, stepping back. Have your coffee with Bryce. Consider it an educational experience. Learn exactly what it feels like when a man pursues you for strategic advantage rather than— He stopped himself, turned toward the door. Rather than what? Jordan asked, her voice barely audible. Maxwell paused in the doorway without turning back. Rather than because he can't stand the thought of you sitting across from another man, he said quietly. Rather than because the idea of someone else making you smile makes him want to burn down the entire city. Rather than because he spent 8 months trying not to care and failing spectacularly. He left before she could respond, his footsteps echoing through the marble hallway, leaving Jordan standing alone in the kitchen with a phone full of texts from Bryce Knight and the sudden, terrifying realization that she'd just shattered something that couldn't be put back together. The pitcher of ice water sat forgotten on the counter, slowly warming in the afternoon sun. He had no idea the night would end in blood. And upstairs, in his office with the glass walls that saw everything, Maxwell Ford poured himself 3 fingers of scotch and watched the security feed showing Jordan still frozen in the kitchen, one hand pressed to her chest like she was trying to keep her heart from escaping. He'd exploded. Not externally, never externally, not where anyone could see the loss of control, but internally. The careful walls he'd built between them had just detonated into dust, and there was no going back. Jordan stood in her small bedroom on the 3rd floor of the Ford mansion, staring at the contents of her closet with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. The black uniform dresses hung in a neat row 7 identical outfits that had defined her existence for the past 18 months. Professional, invisible, safe. Wear something other than the uniform. Bryce's text echoed in her mind as she pushed past the work clothes to the small section of personal garments shoved in the back. A blue sweater she'd bought on sale last winter. Dark jeans that actually fit properly. The burgundy blouse her sister had given her for Christmas that she'd never had occasion to wear. But the real question was, who planned it? She pulled out the blouse with trembling fingers. It was too nice for coffee, too deliberate. It screamed, "I tried," which was exactly what she was terrified of broadcasting. But wearing the uniform to meet Bryce felt wrong too. Like she was bringing Maxwell into a space that was supposed to be separate from him. Like she couldn't exist as anything other than his employee even when she was off the clock. She changed quickly, her movements jerky with anxiety. The blouse felt foreign against her skin, softer than the stiff uniform fabric. The neckline cut lower than anything she wore in the house. She looked at herself in the small mirror above her dresser and barely recognized the woman staring back. Not a maid, just Jordan Gray, 27 years old, ordinary. Except nothing about this situation was ordinary. Her phone showed 3:18 p.m. Bryce would be waiting at the coffee shop in 12 minutes. She needed to leave now if she was going to make it on time. Needed to grab her coat and slip out through the staff entrance and pretend this was normal, that her heart wasn't hammering against her ribs like it was trying to escape her chest. He realized he wasn't alone, someone else had arrived. She opened her bedroom door and stepped into the hallway, and nearly collided with Maxwell Ford standing directly outside, one hand braced against the doorframe, blocking her exit. The air left her lungs in a rush. He'd changed too, still wearing the white shirt and charcoal pants from earlier, but now he'd added the suit jacket. Every inch the powerful executive, the man who controlled millions of dollars with a signature and commanded absolute loyalty through calculated intimidation. Except his eyes. His eyes were anything but controlled. "Mr. Ford," she managed, her voice coming out breathless. "I was just leaving," he finished for her. His gaze traveled slowly down her body, taking in the burgundy blouse, the fitted jeans, the small gold necklace she'd put on at the last second. "For your coffee date with Bryce." The way he said, "coffee date," made it sound obscene, made it sound like she was doing something far more intimate than sitting in a public cafe with a colleague. "It's just coffee," Jordan said, hating how the words sounded exactly like the lie they were becoming. Because it wasn't just coffee, not when Bryce texted her like that, not when she'd spent 20 minutes choosing what to wear, not when Maxwell was standing in her doorway looking at her like she'd committed an act of betrayal. "Move aside, please," she added, trying to inject some authority into her voice. "I'm going to be late." His next decision would decide whether he lived or died. Maxwell didn't move. "Does he know?" "Does he know what?" "Does Bryce know that you think about me when you bring my coffee in the morning?" Maxwell's voice was quiet, controlled, more terrifying than if he'd shouted. "Does he know that you stay late 3 nights a week, not because there's work to finish, but because you can't seem to walk out of this house while I'm still here? Does he know that you rearrange my schedule to create opportunities to see me? That you memorize my preferences? That you notice when I'm tired or stressed or distracted?" Jordan's breath caught. That's not." "Does he know?" Maxwell continued, taking one step forward, forcing her back into her room. "That you watch me through those glass walls when you think I'm not paying attention? That you find excuses to come to my office? That you wore that specific shade of lip color for 3 weeks straight after I mentioned it looked professional in a board meeting? This choice would define the rest of his life." He took another step. She retreated further. The door clicked shut behind him with a finality that sent ice through her veins. "That's my job," she whispered. "Anticipating your needs, managing your preferences, being invisible?" Maxwell finished. "Is that what you think you are to me, Jordan? Invisible?" His hand came up, fingers catching her chin, tilting her face toward the light. "Because if you were invisible, I wouldn't have spent the last 8 months trying not to notice you. Wouldn't have memorized every expression that crosses your face. Wouldn't have had to implement a strict rule about never being alone with you in this house because I don't trust myself within arm's reach of you." Jordan's pulse thundered in her ears. "You don't mean that." "I mean every word." His thumb brushed across her lower lip, the touch so light it might have been accidental except for the deliberate intent in his eyes. "And you're about to walk out of this house dressed like that to meet a man who absolutely means to take what isn't his." "I'm not yours," Jordan said. But the words came out shaky, unconvincing. "Aren't you?" Maxwell's voice dropped lower. "Then why are you trembling? Why is your pulse racing? Why are you looking at me like you're terrified I might let you leave?" Because he was right. God help her. He was right about all of it. He wasn't just fighting for himself, he was fighting for family. "Tell me about Bryce," Maxwell said, his hand falling away from her face, leaving cold air where his touch had been. "Tell me what he offers you that I don't." "He sees me as a person," Jordan said, finding some core of anger to anchor herself. "Not as an employee or a security risk or a convenient household manager. He asked me to coffee because he's interested in me, not because he's calculating some strategic advantage." "You think I don't see you as a person?" Maxwell's laugh was sharp, humorless. "Jordan, I see you so clearly it terrifies me. I see how you take your coffee black, no sugar, but you add cream when you're stressed. I see how you organize files by color because it helps you process information faster. I see how you bite your lower lip when you're concentrating, how you tuck your hair behind your left ear when you're nervous, how you hum under your breath when you think no one's listening. From here on, the rules of the game changed." He moved closer, crowding her space. "I see that you read mystery novels on your lunch break, that you call your sister every Sunday at noon, that you volunteer at a literacy program on your days off, that you're terrified of thunderstorms and pretend you're not, that you cry during insurance commercials but never during actual sad movies because you think that makes you seem tough. Jordan's eyes burned with unshed tears. Stop. Why? Because it's easier to pretend I don't notice? Easier to accept coffee dates with Bryce and tell yourself I only see you as staff? Maxwell's control was fracturing, emotion bleeding through the cracks. I notice everything about you, Jordan. Every single thing. And it's destroying me. Then why? Her voice broke. Why keep me at a distance? Why treat me like I'm just another employee, if you feel? Because the moment I acknowledge what you are to me, everything changes, Maxwell said. My enemies become your enemies. My world violent, complicated, dangerous becomes your world. Every threat I've spent years managing becomes a threat to you. And I can't. He stopped, jaw clenching. I built walls between us for your protection, not mine. I never asked for protection, Jordan whispered. No, you asked for coffee with Bryce Knight. The coldness returned to his voice like a door slamming shut. And you're going to be late. If people like Bryce Knight, who manipulate situations for strategic advantage, make your blood boil like they do mine, hit that subscribe button and join us. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Let's stand together against everyone who's ever used someone's vulnerability against them. He stepped back, creating space between them that felt infinite, despite being only inches. His hand reached for the doorknob, his body language screaming dismissal. But his eyes begged her to stay. Jordan grabbed her coat from the hook behind the door. Her movements mechanical. She would go. She would have coffee with Bryce. She would prove that Maxwell Ford didn't own her, didn't control her, didn't get to dictate her personal life, just because he paid her salary. She would prove she could walk away from him, even if it killed her. She moved toward the door. Maxwell didn't stop her this time, just stood aside with perfect, terrible courtesy. She passed within inches of him, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body, close enough to smell his cologne and see the muscle jumping in his jaw. Jordan. Her name on his lips stopped her at the threshold. Does he make you feel what I make you feel right now? She didn't answer, couldn't answer, just kept walking down the hallway, down the stairs, toward the staff entrance and the world outside these walls where Bryce Knight was waiting with coffee and uncomplicated interest. Behind her, she heard Maxwell's door close with controlled precision. What followed next was completely unexpected, and knew, with absolute certainty, that nothing would ever be the same. The coffee shop on 5th was exactly what Bryce had promised: cozy, anonymous. Nothing like the high-end establishments Maxwell frequented for business. Exposed brick walls, mismatched furniture, the smell of roasted beans and fresh pastries. The kind of place where Jordan could almost pretend she was normal. Bryce stood when he saw her approach, his smile warm and genuine in a way that should have made her feel safe. He'd claimed a corner table away from the windows, pulled out her chair before she could reach for it, ordered her a latte without asking because he'd remembered she mentioned it once. You look beautiful, he said as she sat down. Worth the wait. She'd been 7 minutes late. 7 minutes of sitting in her car outside the mansion, hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to convince herself to drive away. 7 minutes of seeing Maxwell's face in her mind, hearing his voice. Does he make you feel what I make you feel? Thank you, Jordan said automatically. Sorry I'm late. Traffic. It was a lie. There was no traffic. But Bryce didn't challenge it, just handed her the latte with a smile that said he was happy she'd shown up at all. Something didn't add up, and the truth was darker than he expected. I wasn't sure you'd come, he admitted, settling back into his chair. I know working for Maxwell means maintaining certain boundaries, professional distance and all that. The casual way he said Maxwell's name, like they were equals. Like Bryce wasn't second in command to a man who could end his career with a phone call, set Jordan's teeth on edge. It's just coffee, she said for the 3rd time that day. I'm allowed to have a personal life. Are you? Bryce asked, something sharper entering his tone. Because from where I'm sitting, Maxwell Ford doesn't seem like the type of boss who encourages his staff to have personal lives. Especially not his live-in household manager, who has access to his private schedule, his security systems. Is that what this is about? Jordan interrupted, her coffee untouched. You want information about Maxwell? Bryce had the grace to look caught. That's not, I didn't ask you here to interrogate you about work. Then why did you ask me here? She leaned forward, anger replacing anxiety. Because you've worked in the Ford organization for 4 years, Bryce. We've crossed paths 100 times, and you've never shown interest before, never asked for my number, never suggested coffee, never looked at me like anything other than one of Maxwell's employees. So what changed? Someone in the room was lying, but who? You changed, Bryce said quietly. 3 months ago you changed. Started wearing your hair down instead of pulled back. Started looking, I don't know, less like you were trying to disappear. Like you wanted to be seen. 3 months ago. Right around the time Maxwell had returned from a business trip to find her in his office after hours, crying over something stupid, a letter from her mother, some family drama that shouldn't have mattered. He'd walked in, frozen in the doorway, and for 30 seconds they'd just stared at each other while Jordan's carefully maintained professional facade crumbled. Then he'd turned and left without a word. The next day she'd found a raise in her bank account and a note on her desk. Take next Friday off. Rest. She'd been furious. As if money could fix what was breaking inside her. As if time off was what she needed when what she actually needed was… What? For Maxwell to acknowledge that something existed between them? For him to cross the lines he'd drawn so carefully? For him to stop treating her like fragile glass he couldn't risk touching? I wanted to be seen, Jordan admitted to Bryce. You're right about that. By me? Bryce asked. Or by him? The question landed like a blade between her ribs. He trusted her. And that was his biggest mistake. This was a mistake, Jordan said, reaching for her purse. I should go. I'm sorry, Bryce. This isn't fair to you. I can't. You're in love with him. Not a question. A statement delivered with resignation and something that looked like pity. Jordan's hand froze on her purse strap. That's not, Jordan. I've watched you two circle each other for 18 months like you're the only people in the room. The way he looks at you when you're not paying attention, the way you rearrange your entire schedule to avoid being alone with him, the way his mood depends entirely on whether you're in the house or not. Bryce shook his head. Everyone sees it except apparently you two. He's my employer, Jordan said. But the words tasted like ash. That's all. I work for him. I manage his household. There's nothing. There's everything, Bryce interrupted. And you know what the sad part is? I asked you here hoping maybe I could be the catalyst. The thing that finally pushes him to admit what everyone already knows, that Maxwell Ford is so obsessed with his maid that he's about to implode from trying to pretend he's not. But he had no idea a bigger force was controlling everything. Jordan's phone buzzed in her purse. Once. Twice. 3 times in rapid succession. She pulled it out with shaking hands. 3 texts, all from Maxwell. Maxwell Ford. Where are you? Maxwell Ford. Answer me. Maxwell Ford. Come home. Now. The last one had been sent 47 seconds ago. Home. He'd called the mansion home, like it was theirs together, like she belonged there beyond her employment contract. Go, Bryce said, reading her expression. Before he burns down the city looking for you. I'm sorry, Jordan whispered. I shouldn't have. This was unfair to you. Yeah, well. Bryce's smile was sad. At least I can say I tried. Tell Maxwell he owes me for this. I just handed him exactly what he wanted on a silver platter. What's that? A reason to stop pretending he can stay away from you. This was only the beginning of a much bigger war. Jordan stood, her latte still untouched, her coat barely on before she was moving toward the door. The drive back to the mansion took 11 minutes that felt like hours. Every red light was torture. Every slow driver was an enemy. Her phone buzzed with 2 more texts, then started ringing. She declined the call. She couldn't hear his voice right now. Couldn't handle whatever carefully controlled anger he'd weaponized into words. The mansion appeared through the trees, all glass and stone and perfect architecture. Security waved her through the gate without stopping. Even they knew something was wrong. She parked in her usual spot and walked toward the staff entrance on legs that felt disconnected from her body. The door opened before she could reach it. Maxwell stood in the doorway, still wearing the suit from earlier, his hair slightly messed like he'd been running his hands through it. His eyes locked onto her with an intensity that stole her breath. 18 minutes, he said, his voice dangerously quiet. You were with him for 18 minutes. You were tracking me? Jordan's anger sparked. You had someone following me? I always know where you are, Maxwell said flatly. Did you really think I'd let you leave this house without security? That I'd risk you being unprotected just to maintain some illusion of privacy? He didn't want revenge. He needed it. He stepped aside, allowing her entry but blocking escape. Inside. Now. We're going to have a conversation you've been avoiding for 18 months. I'm not avoiding anything, Jordan said, but her voice shook. You're the one who built walls. You're the one who treats me like… Like what? Maxwell closed the door behind her with controlled force. Like you're precious? Like you're irreplaceable? Like the thought of something happening to you makes me want to destroy anyone who gets too close? Like I'm a thing you own, Jordan whispered. Like I don't get a choice. You have every choice. Maxwell moved closer, backing her against the wall. You can walk out that door right now. Find another job. Leave this house and never look back. I won't stop you. You're lying. Yes. The admission came out raw. I'm lying. Because the truth is, I couldn't let you go if you begged me. Couldn't watch you walk away into some normal life with some normal man who doesn't have blood on his hands and enemies at his gate. For once, he wasn't thinking like a boss, but like a man about to lose everything. His hand slammed against the wall beside her head, making her jump. But here's what I need you to understand, Jordan. That coffee date with Bryce? That little test of whether I'd react? It worked. You shattered every wall I built, burned every rule I set, proved that I can't maintain this distance even when it's the smart thing, the safe thing, the right thing to do. I wasn't testing you, Jordan said. I just wanted, what, to be seen? To matter? To know if I'd care? Maxwell's laugh was bitter. You matter so much I can barely function. You're so visible to me that I see you even when you're not here. And I care so fucking much that I'm about to cross every line I swore I wouldn't cross. His free hand came up, fingers tangling in her hair, tilting her face toward his. So tell me right now, Jordan. Tell me this was just coffee with a colleague. Tell me you feel nothing when I touch you. Tell me I'm wrong about this thing between us. Lie to me convincingly enough, and I'll step back. I'll rebuild the walls. I'll go back to pretending you're just my employee and not the only thing in this world I'd burn everything to protect. Jordan's eyes filled with tears, because she couldn't tell him any of those things. Couldn't lie when his fingers were in her hair and his breath was on her face and his eyes were looking at her like she was the answer to a question he'd been asking his entire life. I can't, she whispered. I can't lie to you. Then tell me the truth. His thumb brushed away a tear that escaped down her cheek. Tell me why you went to coffee with Bryce when you knew you had to know it would destroy me. Because I wanted you to care, Jordan admitted, the words tearing out of her. Because I've spent 18 months being professional and invisible and perfect, and I needed to know if you'd react. If I mattered beyond the coffee I bring and the schedule I manage and the household I run. She pressed her palms against his chest, feeling his heartbeat thundering under expensive fabric. I needed to know if you'd fight for me, or if you'd just let me go because it was easier, safer, more convenient to keep me at a distance. Maxwell's jaw clenched. And now you know. Now I know, Jordan whispered. Was it worth it? His voice was raw. Breaking us like this? Forcing my hand? Making me admit that I can't, that I won't. This single decision gave him the upper hand again. He stopped himself, pulling back slightly, but his hand stayed in her hair, anchoring her in place. Tomorrow, Bryce will tell everyone about your coffee date. It'll spread through the organization like fire, and they'll all know that someone challenged me, that someone made a move on what's mine. I'm not yours, Jordan said weakly. Keep telling yourself that. Maxwell's smile was dark. See how long that lie holds up. He released her suddenly, stepping back, creating cold space between them, his control snapping back into place like armor, his expression shuddering into the ice-cold mask she knew so well. Go to your room, Jordan. Rest. Process whatever you need to process. He straightened his jacket with precise movements. Because tomorrow morning, everything changes. Tomorrow, I stop pretending I can keep you at a distance. Tomorrow, everyone in this house and this organization learns exactly what you are to me. What am I to you? Jordan asked, her voice barely audible. Maxwell looked at her for a long moment, something vulnerable flickering behind his eyes before vanishing. Mine, he said simply. You're mine. You've been mine since the day you walked through my door and looked at me like I was a person instead of a title. And tomorrow, everyone else will know it too. He didn't realize this moment would come back to haunt him. He walked away before she could respond, his footsteps echoing through the marble hallway, leaving Jordan pressed against the wall with tears on her face and the certain knowledge that she'd just set something in motion that couldn't be stopped. Jordan didn't sleep. She lay in her bed on the 3rd floor, staring at the ceiling while her mind replayed Maxwell's words on an endless loop. Mine. You're mine. Like it was simple. Like ownership was the same as love. Like claiming her publicly would somehow solve the impossible situation they'd created. At 6:47 a.m., her phone buzzed with a text. Maxwell Ford. My office. 7 a.m. Don't make me come get you. She dressed in her uniform out of habit, the black dress that signaled professional distance. the armor she'd worn for 18 months. But her hands shook as she buttoned it. Everything felt different now. The fabric felt wrong. The role felt impossible to inhabit. He should have walked away. But then he saw it. She walked down to his office at 6:58, her heart hammering so hard it hurt. The door was already open. Maxwell stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out over the grounds, wearing dark slacks and a white shirt with sleeves rolled to his elbows. No jacket, no tie, like he'd given up pretending this was a business meeting. "Close the door," he said without turning. She did. The click of the latch felt final. "I need to tell you something," Maxwell said, still facing the windows. "And I need you to listen without interrupting, without defending yourself, without trying to run. Can you do that?" Jordan's throat was too tight to speak. She nodded, realized he couldn't see her, and managed to whisper, "Yes." Hidden in the files was a secret that could destroy them all. 8 years ago, I killed a man. The words were delivered with the same tone he'd used to discuss quarterly earnings. Not metaphorically, not through business dealings gone wrong. I put a gun to his head and pulled the trigger in the basement of this mansion because he'd threatened someone I cared about. Jordan's breath caught. Of course she'd known that Maxwell's world was violent, that the Ford Empire operated in spaces where law enforcement didn't reach. But hearing it stated so plainly, so calmly, made it real in a way that abstraction never had. "I've made decisions that cost people their lives," Maxwell continued. "Ordered things I can't take back. Built this empire on foundations that would horrify you if you looked too closely. I'm not a good man, Jordan. I'm a man who does terrible things and justifies them as necessary." He finally turned to face her. "So when I tell you that I've spent 18 months keeping you at a distance for your protection, I mean it literally. My enemies don't hesitate. They don't negotiate. They find the thing you love most, and they destroy it to hurt you. And if anyone in my world knew what you actually mean to me, they'd come for you without hesitation." "I understand," Jordan whispered. Everyone thought the deal went smoothly. But they were wrong. "No," Maxwell's voice sharpened. "You don't. You can't. Because you live in the visible part of this house, the pretty part, the part where the worst violence you see is me losing my temper over scheduling conflicts. You don't see the meetings I take in the East Wing. You don't hear the conversations I have at 3 a.m. with people who solve problems with bullets instead of lawyers." He moved toward her, each step deliberate. "But after yesterday, after I reacted exactly the way you wanted me to react, there's no more hiding. Bryce knows, and if Bryce knows, then within 48 hours, everyone knows. Every rival who wants leverage against me, every enemy who wants to hurt me, every person who's spent years looking for a weakness, they all know now." Jordan's legs felt weak. I wasn't trying to put myself in danger, I just wanted. "You wanted me to acknowledge what you are to me," Maxwell finished. "Mission accomplished. Now we deal with the consequences." He was close enough now that she could see the exhaustion in his face, the shadows under his eyes that suggested he hadn't slept either. "I spent all night trying to figure out how to walk this back, how to contain the damage, how to make you safe again." "And?" Jordan asked. What she found in the envelope froze her in place. "And I can't." Maxwell's control cracked at the edges. "I can't put the walls back up. Can't pretend I don't." He stopped, jaw clenching. "I tried. For 8 hours, I tried to convince myself I could let you go. Let you quit. Leave this house. Start fresh somewhere my enemies can't reach you. Even drafted your severance package. 6 months' salary, excellent references, enough money to disappear completely." He pulled a folded envelope from his pocket, held it out to her. Jordan stared at it like it was a weapon. "You want me to leave. I want you safe," Maxwell corrected. "Which means as far away from me as possible. So take it. Take the money and go. I won't stop you. Won't follow you. Won't." Jordan snatched the envelope from his hand and tore it in half. Then in half again. The pieces fluttered to the floor between them like snow. "I'm not leaving," she said. "Jordan." "No." Her voice was stronger now, anger burning through fear. "You don't get to do this. You don't get to spend 18 months making me feel invisible, then one night making me feel like the center of your universe, then the next morning trying to pay me to disappear for my own good." But this wasn't the first time something like this had happened. She stepped closer, closing the distance he'd tried to maintain. "You want to know why I went to coffee with Bryce? It wasn't to make you jealous, Maxwell. It was to see if you'd let me go. If you'd shrug it off and confirm what I'd started to believe, that I was just convenient, just good at my job. Just another employee you'd replace without a second thought. You're not. But you couldn't let me go, Jordan interrupted. You tracked me. You waited for me. You backed me against a wall and told me I was yours. Like that solved everything. So now we're here. And you're trying to do the noble thing, trying to protect me by pushing me away. And I'm telling you it won't work. You don't understand what you're refusing, Maxwell said, his voice dropping to something desperate. The moment you stay, the moment you choose this, you become a target. Every meeting I take, every deal I make, every enemy I create becomes your problem too. You think you're afraid now? Wait until someone threatens you to get to me. Wait until you're used as leverage. Wait until I'm loved? Jordan finished softly. Wait until I matter enough to someone that they'd burn the world down to keep me safe. Wait until I'm chosen, permanently, instead of kept at arm's length for my own good. Maxwell stared at her like she'd spoken a foreign language. This isn't love, Jordan. This is obsession. This is possession. This is me being so fucked up that I can't separate wanting you safe from wanting you mine. Maybe it's both, Jordan said. Maybe you can be obsessed and protective and terrifying and still love me. Maybe I can understand the danger and choose you anyway. Maybe, and suddenly, he realized he was being played. Maybe you're not thinking clearly, Maxwell interrupted, desperation bleeding into his voice. Maybe you've spent 18 months in this house and Stockholm Syndrome is a real thing, and I'm the worst kind of man for even considering. Jordan grabbed his face between her hands, forcing him to look at her. Stop. Stop trying to convince me you're the villain. Stop trying to push me away from my protection. Stop acting like my fear of your world matters more than my fear of living without you. Your fear should matter, Maxwell said. But his hands came up to cover hers, holding her palms against his face like he couldn't bear to let go. Your safety should matter more than what? Jordan asked. Than your feelings? Than this thing between us? Than the fact that I've been in love with you since month 3 of working here when you found me crying in your office, and instead of firing me for unprofessionalism, you gave me a raise and told me to rest? Maxwell's breath caught. You said it was allergies. I lied. Jordan's voice cracked. I was crying because I'd realized I was falling for you and it was the most hopeless, stupid, dangerous feeling I'd ever experienced. And instead of being angry that I was falling apart on company time, you were kind, and that made it so much worse. Under the floorboard, he discovered a truth he wasn't ready for. Jordan. Her name on his lips sounded like prayer and curse combined. We can't. We already have, Jordan whispered. The moment you waited up for me last night. The moment you told me I was yours. The moment you admitted you've been trying not to notice me for 18 months and failing. We already crossed every line that mattered. Maxwell's hands tightened on hers, his eyes closing like he was in pain. If I let you stay, if I stop fighting this, I need you to understand what you're agreeing to. I'm not a man who does things halfway. I'm not going to date you casually or see where things go. If you stay, you're mine. Completely. Permanently. In every way that matters. Possessive much? Jordan asked, trying for levity and failing. Catastrophically, Maxwell admitted. I don't know how to want something and not consume it. Don't know how to love without owning. My father used to say I treated people like assets to be acquired and controlled. He was right. And the terrifying part is that you... He opened his eyes, the vulnerability in them staggering. I want to acquire and control more than anything I've ever wanted in my life. His right-hand man had been hiding something from him. Then do it, Jordan said. Stop trying to noble. Stop trying to protect me from yourself. Stop trying to convince me to run. Just... Her voice dropped to a whisper. Just choose me, publicly, permanently, the way you want to. This will change everything, Maxwell warned. Your life here, your safety, your freedom. Once everyone knows you're mine, you can't take it back. Can't change your mind. Can't decide 6 months from now that you made a mistake and leave quietly. Good, Jordan said. I don't want quiet. I want you. Maxwell was silent for a long moment, his thumbs brushing across her cheekbones, his eyes searching hers for something doubt, fear, hesitation, anything he could use to justify pushing her away one more time. But Jordan met his gaze steadily, terrified, yes, but certain. I'm going to ruin you, Maxwell said quietly. I'm going to make it impossible for you to exist anywhere but at my side. I'm going to consume you so completely that you'll forget what it felt like to be anything other than mine. Promise? Jordan asked. Something in Maxwell's expression cracked. The control he'd maintained so carefully shattered into pieces. He pulled her against his chest with enough force to steal her breath, one hand fisting in her hair, the other wrapping around her waist like he was preventing her escape. "Mine," he said against her ear. "Say it. Say you understand what you're agreeing to." "I'm yours," Jordan whispered. "And you're mine. That's how this works, right? You don't get to be possessive and protective and all-consuming unless I get to own you right back." Maxwell's laugh was shaky, raw. "You already do. You've owned me since the day you walked through my door and looked at me like I was worth something beyond my bank account and my title." He pulled back just enough to look at her face, his hands still holding her like she might disappear. "Tomorrow, this becomes real. Tomorrow, everyone knows. Tomorrow, there's no going back. You sure?" "Tomorrow's too late," Jordan said. "Make it real now. Today. This moment. Stop waiting." Maxwell's eyes darkened. "If I start, then don't stop," Jordan finished. And finally, he stopped fighting it. Maxwell kept his word. By noon the next day, every person in the Ford organization knew that Jordan Gray was no longer just the household manager. She wasn't sure exactly how the information spread, whether Maxwell made calls, sent emails, or simply let his behavior speak for itself. But she watched it happen in real time through small, deliberate gestures that shattered 18 months of careful distance. He thought it was over until he noticed something strange. He moved her belongings from the third-floor staff room to the primary suite that morning. Himself, not asking, not discussing, just arriving at her door at 7 a.m. with 2 of his security team and methodically transferring every item she owned into the space adjacent to his bedroom. "Maxwell, I can do this myself," she'd protested, watching him handle her clothes with the same precision he applied to business negotiations. "No," he'd replied simply. "You're not carrying your own things like staff anymore. You're not hiding on the 3rd floor like you're temporary. You live where I live now." The security team hadn't reacted, hadn't questioned, just followed orders with the blank professionalism of men who'd learned not to have opinions about their employer's private life. By 9 a.m., she'd received a new phone, same number, different device, with security protocols she didn't understand, and Maxwell's name listed not as Mr. Ford but simply as M. Like even her contact list needed to reflect the shift in their relationship. "Your old phone wasn't secure enough," he'd explained, programming the new device with efficiency that suggested he'd been planning this. "Anyone with decent hacking skills could have tracked you through it. This one's encrypted. Military grade, the same security I use." "Isn't that excessive?" Jordan had asked. "No." Maxwell's tone left no room for argument. Not anymore. But what he discovered next changed everything. At 10:30 a.m., Bryce Knight had arrived at the mansion for what Jordan assumed was a regularly scheduled meeting. She'd been in the kitchen, old habits dying hard when she heard voices in the foyer. Male. Tense. The particular quality of sound that preceded violence. She'd moved toward the entrance, drying her hands on a towel, and frozen at what she saw. Maxwell stood at the bottom of the grand staircase, blocking Bryce's path forward. 2 other men flanked them, Elias Scott and Preston Cole, Maxwell's most trusted associates. The air between them crackled with tension that made Jordan's survival instincts scream danger. "She's not available," Maxwell was saying, his voice carrying the particular quietness that meant absolute fury under control. "Not for coffee. Not for conversation. Not for any reason that involves you thinking you have access to her." Bryce's jaw tightened. "I came to apologize for putting her in an awkward position yesterday. I was out of line." "Yes," Maxwell agreed. "You were, but your apology isn't for her, it's for me. You're apologizing for overstepping, for forgetting your place, for making the catastrophic error of thinking anything in my house, anyone in my life was available for your interest." Jordan's breath caught. The possessiveness in his voice was terrifying and thrilling in equal measure. "Understood," Bryce said carefully. "I apologize, Maxwell. It won't happen again." "No," Maxwell agreed. "It won't." That moment, everything in the room changed. That's when Jordan made the mistake of stepping into view. All 4 men turned toward her simultaneously, their attention locking onto her with varying degrees of intensity. Bryce's expression held apology and resignation. Elias and Preston showed carefully neutral interest, filing away information for later use, but Maxwell's face transformed into something possessive and fierce that stole the air from her lungs. "Jordan," he said. Not a greeting, but a claim. "Come here." It wasn't a request. Jordan crossed the foyer on legs that felt disconnected from her body, hyper-aware of 4 sets of eyes tracking her movement. When she reached Maxwell, His hand immediately found the small of her back, a touch that looked casual but felt like branding. Bryce was just leaving, Maxwell said, his attention never leaving her face. After apologizing for yesterday. You don't need to apologize, Jordan told Bryce, finding her voice. It was just coffee. No, Maxwell interrupted, his hand tightening on her back. It wasn't. And Bryce knows exactly what it was. Don't you, Bryce? Bryce's eyes flicked between them, reading the changed dynamic with the skill of someone who'd survived in Maxwell's organization through careful observation. I know. And I'm sorry, to both of you. I'll be going. He left quickly, Elias and Preston following with backward glances that promised this story would spread through the organization within hours. When the door closed, Jordan pulled away from Maxwell's touch. That was unnecessary. You humiliated him in front of your associates. I made a point, Maxwell corrected. A point that needed making. Bryce overstepped. He needed to understand. Everyone needs to understand that you're not available. Not for coffee. Not for casual conversation. Not for anything that involves them forgetting what you are to me. And what am I to you? Jordan asked, echoing her question from the night before. Your possession? Your property? Something you acquired? What he said next shattered his trust instantly. My partner, Maxwell said, the word clearly difficult for him. He stopped, jaw clenching. I don't have good words for this, Jordan. I don't have experience with relationships that aren't transactional. But you're not an acquisition. You're... His phone buzzed. He pulled it out with a frustrated gesture, then went still. Fuck. What? Ren Foster just requested a meeting. Maxwell's voice had gone cold. For tomorrow. At neutral ground. Specifically mentioning that she's heard I have a new associate she'd like to meet. Jordan's blood went cold. She'd heard the name before. Ren Foster, the woman who ran the rival organization to the east, known for being ruthless and strategic in ways that made Maxwell look soft by comparison. How does she know already? Jordan asked. Because I made sure everyone would know, Maxwell said flatly. Because I wanted it clear that you're protected. That touching you means war. But there's a downside to that protection. It makes you interesting. Makes you a person worth meeting. Worth assessing. Worth using as leverage, Jordan finished. Yes. Maxwell was already texting, his fingers moving rapidly across the screen. Which is why you're not going anywhere near that meeting. You're staying here, behind security, where... No, Jordan interrupted. Maxwell looked up sharply. That wasn't a request. In that moment, the entire balance of power flipped. And I'm not staff anymore, Jordan countered. You moved me into your bedroom this morning. You claimed me publicly in front of your associates. You told me yesterday that if I stayed, I was yours completely, permanently, in every way that matters. That works both ways, Maxwell. You don't get to be possessive and protective and then shut me out when your world gets dangerous. This is different, Maxwell said. Ren Foster isn't. Isn't what? Someone I need protection from? Someone who might hurt me to hurt you? Jordan stepped closer. That's literally what you warned me about. That's the danger you tried to push me away to avoid. But I chose this anyway. I chose you anyway. So you don't get to lock me away in your mansion like a secret you need to protect. I'm trying to keep you alive, Maxwell said through clenched teeth. I know, Jordan's voice softened. But you're also trying to control a situation you can't control. Ren Foster knows about me now. That can't be undone. So either I'm your partner, someone who faces your world with you, or I'm your possession, something you hide and protect and keep separate. Which is it? Maxwell stared at her for a long moment. You have no idea what you're asking. Then explain it to me, Jordan said. Help me understand instead of making decisions for me. Maxwell was silent, conflict clear in his expression. Then he gestured toward his office. Fine, come with me. If you're going to be part of this, you need to understand exactly what this is. But he had no idea a bigger force was controlling everything. They spent the next 2 hours in his office while Maxwell laid out the architecture of his organization with brutal honesty. The legitimate businesses that fronted illegal operations. The network of associates who operated in gray spaces between legal and criminal. The enemies who'd spent years looking for weaknesses to exploit. The violence that simmered constantly beneath the surface of wealth and power. He showed her police reports he'd had buried. Revealed associates who'd disappeared when they became liabilities. Explained the 3 attempts on his life in the past 5 years, and how he'd responded with calculated escalation that left his enemies too afraid to try again. This is what you're choosing, Maxwell said finally. This is the world you're agreeing to inhabit. Still sure you want this? Jordan's hands were shaking. She felt sick. But she also felt something else, clarity. Because this was the truth she'd sensed for 18 months. The violence underneath the expensive suits, the danger behind the controlled facade. And Maxwell was finally trusting her enough to see it clearly. I'm sure, she said. But I need something from you. What? Stop trying to protect me from yourself, Jordan said. Stop treating me like I'm fragile. I'm not. I'm terrified, yes. But I'm also choosing this with full knowledge of what it means. So trust me to handle it. Trust me to be strong enough for your world. From here on, the rules of the game changed. Maxwell pulled her against his chest suddenly, his arms wrapping around her with desperate strength. I'm trying, but you're the only thing in my life I can't afford to lose. The only thing that actually matters. So forgive me if I'm failing at treating you like you're anything other than the most precious, valuable, irreplaceable. His phone rang. He answered without releasing her, his voice going cold and professional. Yes? A pause. Then, when? Another pause, longer this time. Maxwell's body went rigid. Send me the address. We'll be there in 20 minutes. He ended the call and stepped back, his expression shuddering into ice-cold calculation. That was security. Someone just delivered a package to the front gate. Addressed to you. No return address. No sender identification. A package? Jordan's voice came out thin. More like a message, Maxwell said. From Ren Foster. She doesn't waste time. He was already moving toward the door, pulling his phone out, issuing orders in rapid succession. Full security protocol. No one enters or leaves without authorization. Get the bomb squad here for the package. And get my car ready. We're leaving. Leaving? Jordan followed him. You just said... That was before Ren Foster sent you a message 12 hours after learning you exist. Maxwell interrupted. We're not staying here while she makes her next move. We're going somewhere she can't reach. Somewhere she can't. And then... The gun clicked. The explosion was distant but unmistakable. The mansion's windows rattled. Car alarms started screaming from the garage. Maxwell went absolutely still. Then he was moving faster than Jordan had ever seen him move, pulling her toward the secure room in the east wing, barking orders into his phone with deadly calm. Lock down the property. Find the source. Get medical standing by. And call Preston, tell him Ren Foster just declared war. He pulled Jordan into the reinforced room and locked the door behind them. The space was small, windowless, clearly designed for exactly this scenario. Maxwell positioned himself between her and the door, his body language screaming protection. What just happened? Jordan asked, her voice shaking. Ren Foster sent a message, Maxwell said quietly. The package was a bomb. Small one. Designed to scare rather than destroy. She wants me to know she can reach you. That my protection isn't absolute. That claiming you publicly made you a target. He pulled out his phone, checking messages with grim efficiency. No casualties. Minor damage to the front gate security booth. She timed it for when no one would be hurt. This was demonstration, not assassination. So what now? Jordan asked. Maxwell looked at her with eyes that held fury and fear in equal measure. Now I remind Ren Foster why people don't challenge me. Now I show her that threatening you was the worst strategic error she could have made. Now. He stopped, pulling Jordan against his chest. Now you understand why I wanted you to leave. Why I tried to keep you at a distance. Why I knew this would be catastrophic. I understand, Jordan said against his shirt. I'm terrified. But I'm also not leaving. You're stuck with me, Maxwell. Bombs and all. His arms tightened around her. Tomorrow, we meet with Ren. Together. No more hiding. No more protecting you by keeping you separate. If she wants to threaten you, she can do it to my face while understanding exactly what that threat will cost her. Is that safe? Jordan asked. No, Maxwell admitted. But nothing about this is safe. Nothing about us is safe. So we might as well stop pretending otherwise. He had no idea the night would end in blood. He pulled back just enough to look at her face. Last chance, Jordan. After tomorrow, there's no going back. After I show up to meet Ren Foster with you at my side, every enemy I have will know exactly who you are and what you mean to me. Still sure? Jordan thought about the explosion, about Ren Foster's message, about the danger Maxwell had tried so hard to protect her from, about how much easier it would be to run, to take his severance package, to disappear into a normal life where bombs weren't messages and possessive mafia bosses weren't her choice of partner. I'm sure, she said, and watched something in Maxwell's expression transform from fear to determination. Then tomorrow, he said quietly. We go to war. They spent that night in the secure room. Not because it was necessary, Maxwell's security team had cleared the property within an hour, confirming the explosion was contained, controlled, a message rather than a genuine attempt at destruction. But because Maxwell refused to let Jordan out of arm's reach, and the secure room had reinforced walls, monitored air filtration, and a single access point he could defend absolutely, Jordan sat on the narrow cot that served as emergency furniture, watching Maxwell pace like a caged predator. He'd been on the phone for 3 straight hours, coordinating with security, issuing orders to his associates, and making calls that she suspected involved threats graphic enough that he didn't want her hearing them. Now, at 2 a.m., the phone finally silent, he just paced. 5 steps to the wall, turn, 5 steps back, the movement of a man whose control was fracturing and who couldn't figure out how to restore it. You should rest, Jordan said quietly. Something didn't add up, and the truth was darker than he expected. I can't. Maxwell didn't stop moving. Every time I close my eyes, I see that explosion reaching you instead of the security booth. I see Wren Foster making good on her threat. I see... He stopped abruptly, hands fisting at his sides. I see you dying because I wasn't smart enough to keep you away from me. That's not how it works, Jordan said. You didn't plant the bomb. Wren Foster did. You're not responsible for... I'm responsible for everything that happens to you, Maxwell interrupted, finally stopping to look at her. That's what claiming you publicly means. Every threat, every danger, every person who decides you're leverage, that's on me. That's what I brought into your life by refusing to let you walk away. Jordan stood, crossing the small space to stand in front of him. You didn't refuse to let me walk away. I refused to go. Big difference. Is it? Maxwell's voice was raw. Because from where I'm standing, I manipulated this entire situation, made myself indispensable to you, made it impossible for you to leave without losing your job, your security, your home. I trapped you here through economic control and emotional dependence. And then I acted like you chose this freely. He wasn't just fighting for himself, he was fighting for family. Stop, Jordan said firmly. Stop rewriting history to make yourself the villain. Yes, you're my employer. Yes, leaving would have meant starting over. But I had options, Maxwell. I had savings. I had other job offers. I stayed because I wanted to stay. Because you... She stopped, searching for words. Because you made me feel seen, made me feel valuable, made me feel like I mattered beyond my job performance. I made you feel like property, Maxwell countered. Made you feel owned. That's not love, Jordan. That's possession masquerading as protection. Maybe it's both, Jordan said, echoing her words from before. Maybe you're possessive and protective. Maybe you want to own me and keep me safe. Maybe those things can exist simultaneously without one canceling out the other. Maxwell's jaw clenched. You're making excuses for behavior you should be running from. I'm accepting reality, Jordan corrected. I'm choosing a man who's complicated and dangerous and terrifying in his intensity. I'm choosing the version of love that comes with bombs and threats and secure rooms at 2 a.m. I'm choosing you, Maxwell. All of you. Including the parts that scare you about yourself. You shouldn't, Maxwell said, but his hands came up to frame her face with a gentleness that contradicted his words. You should demand better. Should find someone normal who doesn't have enemies. Someone who can take you to dinner without security sweeps. Someone who isn't you, Jordan finished. Which would solve nothing because I don't want someone else. I want you. Complicated, possessive, terrifying you. Maxwell's thumb brushed across her lower lip. I ruined you for normal, didn't I? Made it impossible for you to want anything uncomplicated. You didn't ruin me, Jordan said. You just showed me what I actually want, which isn't safety. It's you. Same thing, Maxwell said quietly. Because wanting me is the least safe thing you could possibly do. For once, he wasn't thinking like a boss, but like a man about to lose everything. His phone buzzed a text message that made his expression harden. He showed her the screen. WREN Foster. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. Russo's restaurant. Neutral ground. Bring your new pet. I'm curious to meet the woman stupid enough to fall for your particular brand of control. Jordan read it twice, anger burning through fear. Pet? Calculated insult, Maxwell said. She's trying to make you angry, trying to create wedge between us by suggesting you're not my partner but my possession. Classic manipulation. It's working, Jordan admitted. I want to meet this woman just so I can tell her exactly how wrong she is. Maxwell's expression shifted, pride mixing with concern. That's what she wants. She wants you emotional. Wants you to walk into that meeting defensive and angry, which makes you easier to manipulate, easier to read, easier to use as leverage against me. So what do I do instead? Jordan asked. You stay here, Maxwell said. Behind security. Safe. While I meet with Ren and make it very clear that threatening you was a strategic error that will cost her dearly. No, Jordan said. We already decided. That was before the explosion, Maxwell interrupted. Before Ren proved she can reach you despite my security. Before I had to actually confront the reality of you being hurt because of me. I can't. His voice cracked. I can't walk into that restaurant with you, Jordan. I can't give Ren Foster face-to-face access to the one thing in this world I can't afford to lose. This choice would define the rest of his life. Then you go alone and prove her right, Jordan said. You prove that I'm something you hide and protect and keep separate. That I'm your weakness instead of your partner. That claiming me publicly was a show because you still don't trust me to handle your world. That's exactly what it is, Jordan interrupted. You said yesterday that if I stayed, I was yours completely, permanently, in every way that matters. But that has to work both ways. I have to be allowed into every part of your life, including the dangerous parts. Otherwise, I'm not your partner. I'm your possession that you take out when it's safe and lock away when it's not. Maxwell was silent, conflict clear in every line of his body. You're asking me to risk you, to walk you into a meeting with a woman who will absolutely try to hurt you to hurt me, to make you vulnerable just to prove a point. I'm asking you to trust me, Jordan corrected. To trust that I'm strong enough for this. To trust that we're stronger together than you are trying to protect me from a distance. And if you're wrong? Maxwell asked quietly. If Ren sees you as the perfect leverage and decides to act on that? If 6 months from now, she takes you to force my hand on some business deal? If I have to choose between you and my organization, because I was arrogant enough to think I could keep you safe while making you visible? Then we deal with it, Jordan said. Together, the way partners do. But you don't get to make that decision for me. You don't get to lock me away for my own good and call it protection. That's just control disguised as love. The words hung between them like a challenge. But this wasn't the first time something like this had happened. You're right, Maxwell said finally, the admission clearly painful. I am trying to control this situation, trying to control you, trying to manage every variable so I don't have to face the reality that loving you means accepting I can't keep you perfectly safe. He pulled her against his chest, his arms wrapping around her with desperate strength. But here's what you need to understand, Jordan. My father used to say that the Ford men love violently, that we consume what we love until there's nothing left but ash and obsession, and I swore I'd never be like him. Never love something so much it destroyed me. His hand fisted in her hair. But you, God, Jordan. You I love so much it terrifies me. You I want to possess so completely that the idea of you being hurt makes me want to burn down the entire city. You I can't. His voice broke. I can't lose you. I won't survive it. So forgive me if I'm trying to control the uncontrollable. If I'm trying to protect you from threats I can't eliminate. If I'm failing spectacularly at being the partner you deserve instead of the possessive bastard I actually am. Jordan pulled back just enough to look at his face. Say it again. Say what? That you love me, Jordan said. You've said mine 100 times. You've claimed me and possessed me and declared ownership. But you've never said you love me. Not directly. Not without qualification. Maxwell went still. You want words. I want honesty, Jordan corrected. I want to know if this is just possession to you. Just obsession and control. Or if underneath all the violence and intensity and terrifying protectiveness, there's actual love. Her next words hit him harder than any bullet. Maxwell was silent for a long moment. Then, I love you so much it makes me violent. I love you so much that Ren Foster setting off a bomb near you makes me want to wage war against her entire organization. I love you so much that the idea of you sitting across from her tomorrow makes me physically ill with fear. His hands framed her face with a gentleness that contradicted every word. I love you enough that I'm terrified of it. Terrified of what I'd do to keep you safe. Terrified of what I've already done by making you visible to my enemies. Terrified that this love, this violent, consuming, possessive love, will be what destroys you. Or saves me, Jordan whispered. Maybe your love is exactly what keeps me safe. Maybe your possessiveness means no one dares touch me. Maybe your violence, when directed at my enemies instead of at my autonomy, is exactly the protection I need. Maxwell's thumb brushed across her cheekbone. You're very good at reframing my worst traits as virtues. I'm very good at seeing you clearly, Jordan corrected. All of you. including the parts you're afraid of. And I love you anyway. Possessiveness and violence and terrifying intensity included. You shouldn't, Maxwell said, but he was pulling her closer, eliminating any space between them. You should run. Should find someone who loves gently. Someone who isn't you. Jordan finished. We've established that's not what I want. So stop trying to convince me to leave and accept that I'm staying. Accept that I love you too. Accept that we're doing this together, bombs and threats and meetings with dangerous rivals included. Maxwell was quiet for a long moment. Then, tomorrow, we meet with Ren Foster. Together. But you follow my lead. If I tell you to leave, you leave. If I tell you to stay silent, you stay silent. If I tell you to run, you run without question. Agreed? Agreed, Jordan lied. Maxwell's eyes narrowed. You're lying. There was one detail everyone missed. Only partially, Jordan admitted. I'll follow your lead on strategy. But if Ren Foster threatens me, I'm responding. I'm not going to sit there silently while she tries to make me feel weak or scared or like I'm just your possession. I'm your partner, which means I get to defend myself and us when she attacks. Maxwell stared at her for a long moment. Then, impossibly, he smiled. It was a dark smile, dangerous, but genuine. You're going to get us both killed, or we're going to survive together, Jordan said. Either way, we're doing it as partners, not as a mafia boss and his hidden weakness. As equals who chose each other despite every rational reason not to. We're not equals, Maxwell said. I have resources, connections, experience you don't have. Pretending otherwise is dangerous. Fine, Jordan conceded. Then I'm your partner who brings different strengths. I bring humanity to your violence, connection to your isolation, love to your control. We balance each other. That's what makes us work. Maxwell pulled her down onto the narrow cot, arranging them so she was tucked against his chest, his body between her and the door even in sleep. Tomorrow's going to be terrible. You know that, right? Ren Foster is going to try to hurt you in ways that don't leave marks. She's going to make you question this choice. Question me. Question whether loving someone like me is worth the price. Let her try, Jordan said against his chest. I've already made my choice. I'm not changing it because she thinks I should. Stubborn, Maxwell murmured. Committed, Jordan corrected. They fell silent, but Jordan knew neither of them was sleeping. Tomorrow loomed large, the meeting with Ren Foster, the threats that would be made, the dangerous game they'd be playing. But tonight, in this secure room with reinforced walls, they had each other, had made a choice to face Maxwell's world together instead of him trying to protect her from a distance. It wasn't safe, wasn't smart, wasn't anything close to the normal life Jordan could have chosen, but it was theirs. Complicated and dangerous and absolutely right. And tomorrow, they'd prove it to everyone who doubted. Russo's restaurant occupied a corner building in neutral territory, neither Ford domain nor Foster ground, but the carefully maintained space where rival organizations met to negotiate, threaten, and occasionally make peace. The interior was elegant in an understated way. White tablecloths, dark wood paneling, servers who knew to be invisible during sensitive conversations. Maxwell's hand never left the small of Jordan's back as they entered. She dressed carefully that morning, a navy sheath dress that looked professional without being submissive, heels that added height without being impractical if she needed to run. Her hair was pulled back in a way that suggested control, composure, someone who knew exactly what she was walking into. She was terrified. Remember, Maxwell murmured as they approached the private dining room in the back. Let me handle Ren. Don't react to provocations. Don't let her see how scared I am, Jordan finished. I know. One wrong move, and everything would fall apart. Maxwell's hand tightened on her back, reassurance or warning. She couldn't tell. Then he was opening the door, his expression shifting into the ice-cold mask she recognized from business negotiations. The face of a man who felt nothing, feared nothing, controlled everything. Ren Foster sat at the head of the table, a glass of red wine in her hand, looking like she'd been waiting hours instead of arriving precisely on time. She was younger than Jordan expected, maybe 40, with dark hair cut in a severe bob and eyes that assessed with surgical precision. She wore black, expensive, tailored to perfection. Everything about her screamed power maintained through calculated intelligence. Maxwell, she said, her voice carrying warmth that didn't reach her eyes. Right on time. I appreciate punctuality. Ren. Maxwell's tone was flat. This is Jordan Gray. The maid, Ren said. her gaze sliding to Jordan with interest that felt predatory. How delightfully unconventional. Do sit down, both of you. We have so much to discuss. He couldn't explain why, but danger was closing in. Maxwell pulled out Jordan's chair, a gesture of courtesy that felt like possession. She sat, hyper-aware of Ren's attention, tracking every movement, every micro-expression, cataloging information for later use. Let's skip the pleasantries, Maxwell said, settling into the chair beside Jordan, his body angled to create a barrier between her and Ren. The explosion yesterday was a message. I'm here to deliver my response. Oh? Ren's smile was sharp. And what response would that be? That threatening Jordan was the last strategic error you'll make, Maxwell said quietly. That if you come near her again, I'll dismantle your organization piece by piece. That claiming neutral ground for this meeting is the only reason you're still breathing. Ren laughed, genuine amusement that made Jordan's skin crawl. There it is, the famous Maxwell Ford possessiveness. I'd heard rumors you'd finally found someone who cracked that ice-cold facade, but I needed to see it for myself. Her attention focused entirely on Jordan. Tell me, dear, what's it like being owned by the most controlling man in the city? I'm not owned, Jordan said before Maxwell could respond. I'm his partner. Partner, Ren repeated, like the word was amusing. Is that what he calls it? Partnership. How progressive. Though I notice he's sitting between us like a wall. Notice he answers for you. Notice the way his hand hasn't left your back since you entered constant contact to ensure you don't stray. Don't speak without permission. Don't. But the real question was, who planned it? Notice how you're trying to manipulate me. Jordan interrupted, her voice steadier than she felt. Trying to make me doubt him. Trying to create distance between us by pointing out behaviors and twisting them into evidence of control rather than protection. Classic manipulation tactic. Ren's eyebrows rose. The maid has teeth. Interesting. Former maid, Maxwell corrected, his voice carrying warning. And if you call her that again, this conversation ends, and the war you're trying to avoid becomes inevitable. War, Ren mused. Over a woman. How romantic. Though I have to ask, Maxwell, is she worth it? Is this, Jordan, worth destabilizing the entire balance of power we've maintained for 8 years? Worth the casualties that will result if you and I go to actual conflict? Worth, yes, Maxwell said simply. Without question, without hesitation, yes. Something shifted in Ren's expression, surprise giving way to calculation. You mean that? You'd actually wage war over her? I'd burn down the entire city, Maxwell said. So perhaps you should reconsider whatever strategy you're employing. Because making Jordan a target made her the most protected person in my organization. Threatening her made her my absolute priority. You didn't find my weakness, Ren. You created my most dangerous strength. Ren was silent for a moment, her fingers tapping against her wineglass. You're not bluffing. I never bluff. This single decision gave him the upper hand again. No, Ren agreed. You don't. Which makes this situation considerably more complicated than I anticipated. Her attention returned to Jordan. Tell me, Jordan, are you aware of what Maxwell did to the last person who threatened someone he cared about? Yes, Jordan said, meeting Ren's gaze directly. He told me, showed me police reports, was completely honest about his capacity for violence. I chose him anyway. Chose him, Ren repeated. Or were trapped by economic dependence and emotional manipulation into thinking you had a choice. Chose him, Jordan said firmly. Freely, with full knowledge of what his world entails, with understanding that this life comes with danger, with acceptance that loving Maxwell Ford means accepting all of him, including the violence you're trying to use to scare me away. Ren studied her for a long moment. Then she laughed, different this time, less predatory, almost respectful. Well, this is unexpected. I thought you'd be weak, Jordan. Thought you'd be the perfect leverage point. Thought threatening you would make Maxwell vulnerable, controllable, willing to negotiate from a position of fear rather than strength. What followed next was completely unexpected. She took a sip of wine. But you're not weak. You're either genuinely in love with him or the best actress I've seen in 20 years. Either way, you've made yourself useless as leverage, because Maxwell's right threatening you doesn't make him vulnerable. It makes him exponentially more dangerous. So we understand each other, Maxwell said. We do. Ren set down her glass with precise movements. Which brings me to why I actually requested this meeting. I don't want war with you, Maxwell. War is expensive, unpredictable, bad for business on both sides. But your relationship with Jordan creates complications I need to address. What complications? Jordan asked before Maxwell could speak. Wren's attention focused on her with laser intensity. You know things about Maxwell that could be valuable to his enemies. You have access to his home, his schedule, his security protocols. You're a vulnerability whether you realize it or not. So I need assurance that you're not going to become a problem. That you're not going to... You want me to sign something? Jordan realized. An NDA, or some kind of contract that prevents me from sharing information about Maxwell if things go wrong. Smart, Wren acknowledged. Yes, that's exactly what I want. Protection for all of us. Because if you and Maxwell's relationship ends badly, and statistically, most relationships do end, I need assurance that you won't take what you know to authorities, to media, to rival organizations who'd pay significant money for that information. No, Maxwell said flatly. Are you Team Maxwell and Jordan? Let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Now's the time, this story is just getting started. No? Wren's eyebrows rose. I'm offering a reasonable compromise. Legal protection that ensures... No, Maxwell repeated. Because asking Jordan to sign that contract implies our relationship is temporary. Implies that she's going to leave. That we're going to end. That this is something casual that requires contingency planning. And that's not what this is. He turned to Jordan, his expression softening in a way Wren couldn't miss. This is permanent. This is forever. This is me choosing her so completely that the idea of planning for our ending is offensive. Maxwell, Wren said carefully. Surely you understand that's not realistic. Relationships end. People change. Circumstances evolve. Planning for that possibility isn't romantic, but it's necessary for... Then kill me, Maxwell interrupted, turning back to Wren. If you're concerned about Jordan becoming a vulnerability after we end, kill me first, because that's the only way this relationship ends if I'm dead. If I cease to exist. Otherwise, she's mine and I'm hers. And your concerns about information security become irrelevant because there won't be a bad ending to plan for. The room went silent. Even the servers who'd been hovering near the door seemed to freeze. You're serious, Wren said finally. Completely. He didn't realize this moment would come back to haunt him. You're willing to stake your organization's security on the assumption that this relationship lasts forever. That Jordan never changes her mind. That circumstances never evolve in a way that makes staying together impossible. Yes, Maxwell said. That's exactly what I'm doing. Wren looked at Jordan. And you? You're comfortable with him gambling everything on you? Comfortable with the responsibility of being the one thing he won't plan contingencies for? Jordan's heart was hammering so hard she could barely hear her own voice. Yes. Why? Wren asked. Why accept that kind of pressure? That kind of responsibility? Why not sign the contract, protect yourself legally, give yourself an out if things become unbearable? Because signing the contract means accepting that we might end, Jordan said. Means planning for failure instead of committing to success. Means keeping one foot out the door just in case. And I don't want that. I want... She stopped, finding Maxwell's gaze. I want all in. No contingencies. No exit strategies. No protection from the possibility of us not working out. That's insane, Wren said flatly. Both of you are insane. Probably, Maxwell agreed. But that's the offer. Jordan doesn't sign anything that implies our relationship is temporary. You accept that she's permanent, she's protected, and threatening her means war. Or you walk away from this meeting and we become enemies. Your choice. This was only the beginning of a much bigger war. Wren was silent for a long moment, her fingers tapping against the table. You've changed, Maxwell. 8 years I've known you, and you've been completely predictable, controlled, strategic, never making moves based on emotion, never gambling on variables you can't manage. And now, she gestured between them, now you're willing to risk everything on love. On a relationship that statistically won't last. On a woman you've known less than 2 years. 18 months, Maxwell corrected. And yes, unbelievable. But Wren was smiling now. Something almost like respect in her expression. Fine. No contract. No contingency planning. No legal protections that imply your relationship might end. Jordan remains your partner, not your vulnerability. And I accept that threatening her means war. She stood, smoothing her dress with precise movements. But understand something, both of you. The moment this relationship ends, if Maxwell is wrong, if circumstances change, if Jordan decides she's made a terrible mistake, every organization in this city will know within hours. And they'll all come for the information she has. They'll offer money, protection, relocation. They'll make it very difficult for her to stay silent about what she knows. Then I guess we better make sure our relationship doesn't end, Maxwell said. I guess you better, Wren agreed. She moved toward the door, then paused. One more thing, Jordan. For what it's worth, I think you're either the bravest woman I've met or the most foolish. Time will tell which. But either way, you've done something no one else has managed in 20 years. You made Maxwell Ford vulnerable. That's impressive. Terrifying, but impressive. She left without waiting for response, the door closing behind her with quiet finality. Jordan waited until the sound of Wren's footsteps faded before turning to Maxwell. You gambled your organization's security on us. Yes. You refused to plan for the possibility of us ending. Yes. You told her you'd rather die than lose me. Yes. Maxwell pulled her against his chest, his arms wrapping around her with familiar strength. All of which is true. All of which I meant. All of which terrifies me because it's the kind of vulnerability I've spent my entire life avoiding. But you, he pulled back just enough to look at her face. You're worth the gamble. Worth the vulnerability. Worth risking everything. What if she's right? Jordan asked quietly. What if we don't last? What if circumstances change or I can't handle your world or we destroy each other trying to make this work? Then we destroy each other, Maxwell said simply. Because I'm not planning for failure, not building exit strategies, not keeping one foot out the door just in case. I'm all in, Jordan. Completely, permanently, forever. Forever's a long time, Jordan said. Not long enough, Maxwell replied. And despite everything, despite the danger, despite Wren's warnings, despite the absolute insanity of two people committing to each other so completely in a world that punished vulnerability, Jordan believed him. The drive back to the mansion was silent. Maxwell kept one hand on the wheel, the other locked with Jordan's fingers, thumb tracing absent patterns across her knuckles. The gesture felt compulsive, like he needed constant physical confirmation that she was still there, still real, still his after the meeting with Wren Foster. Jordan watched the city pass through tinted windows, processing everything that had just happened. The bomb, the meeting, Maxwell refusing to plan for their ending, the weight of being the one thing he wouldn't create contingencies for. You're thinking too loud, Maxwell said quietly. I'm thinking about what you said to Wren, Jordan admitted. About how the only way we end is if you're dead. That's true, Maxwell interrupted. Insane, Jordan finished. It's insane, Maxwell. Relationships end for 1,000 reasons that have nothing to do with death. People grow apart. Circumstances change. What if 5 years from now I can't handle your world anymore? What if the violence becomes too much? What if... Then we figure it out, Maxwell said. Together. But we don't end. We don't split up. We don't walk away from each other just because things get difficult. There was one secret he'd been keeping all along. That's not how relationships work, Jordan protested. Sometimes ending is the healthy choice. Sometimes staying together causes more damage than... Not us, Maxwell said flatly. We don't get that option. I told you Ford men love catastrophically. We consume what we love. We don't let go just because someone decides it's healthier to leave. That's terrifying, Jordan whispered. I know. Maxwell's hand tightened on hers. But it's also honest. I'm not going to pretend I'm capable of the kind of mature, reasonable breakup where we shake hands and wish each other well. I'm not built that way. So you need to be very sure about this, Jordan. Very sure you want permanent. Because once we're in this, once we pass the point of no return, there's no walking it back. Jordan was quiet for a long moment. Then, when is the point of no return? Maxwell pulled the car over abruptly, parking on a tree-lined street Jordan didn't recognize. He killed the engine and turned to face her fully, his expression more vulnerable than she'd ever seen it. I need to show you something, he said. Something I've never shown anyone. And after I do, you get to make one final choice, stay with full knowledge of what you're choosing, or leave with my blessing, and enough money to disappear completely. Maxwell, just... He stopped himself, jaw-clenching. Just trust me, please. He got out of the car, coming around to open her door with the careful courtesy that always felt like claiming. Jordan let him help her out, confused by the location they were in, an older neighborhood, residential, nowhere near the mansion or any part of Maxwell's obvious territory. What he was about to reveal would change everything. Maxwell led her down the sidewalk to a small park, the kind designed for children, with swings and a slide and benches for parents. It was empty now, mid-afternoon on a weekday, quiet except for the sound of wind through trees. He sat on one of the benches, pulling her down beside him. For a long moment, He just stared at the playground equipment like it held answers to questions he didn't know how to ask. My father brought me here when I was 8, Maxwell said finally. Right after my mother left. Right after he'd tried and failed to convince her to stay despite his… He stopped, searching for words. Despite the way he loved her. Jordan stayed silent, sensing this was something he needed to say without interruption. He sat on this exact bench and told me something I've spent 26 years trying to prove wrong, Maxwell continued. He said Ford men love catastrophically, that we consume what we love until there's nothing left, that we can't help it, it's in our blood, our nature, the fundamental way we're wired, and because of that, we destroy everything we care about. His hands fisted on his knees. He said my mother left because she couldn't survive being loved the way Ford men love, that our attention becomes obsession, our protection becomes control, our care becomes possession, and that no matter how much we love someone, we'll eventually consume them until they have no choice but to leave or be destroyed completely. He'd spent years running from this truth. Your father was wrong, Jordan said quietly. Was he? Maxwell turned to look at her, vulnerability stark in his face. Because everything he described, I feel it with you. The obsession, the need to control every variable that might hurt you, the possessiveness that makes me want to eliminate anyone who looks at you wrong, the way I want to consume every part of you until you can't imagine existing without me. He reached for her hand, holding it like he was afraid she'd disappear. I moved your things into my bedroom without asking. I track your location. I eliminated a business relationship with Bryce because he took you for coffee. I refused to plan for the possibility of us ending. I told a dangerous rival I'd rather die than lose you. His voice cracked. That's not normal love, Jordan. That's exactly what my father warned me about. That's catastrophic. Or it's just intense, Jordan countered. Maxwell, your father was describing toxic love. Love that consumes without consent. Love that controls without caring about the other person's needs. But that's not what you're doing, isn't it? Maxwell asked. How is tracking your location not controlling? How is moving your things without permission not? She saw it in his eyes, the fear that he'd become his father. Because you're trying, Jordan interrupted. Because when I push back, you listen. Because when I told you I wanted to come to the meeting with Ren despite the danger, you agreed even though it terrified you. Because you're not actually trying to control me. You're trying to keep me safe while learning how to give me autonomy. She turned on the bench to face him fully. Your father's love was destructive because it was one-sided, because he consumed without caring if your mother wanted to be consumed. But you, she touched his face gently, you keep checking if I'm okay with your intensity. Keep giving me opportunities to leave. Keep trying to figure out how to love me catastrophically while still respecting my choices. I don't know how to do both, Maxwell admitted. Don't know how to love you as completely as I want to while still giving you freedom. Don't know how to be possessive without being controlling. Don't know. He stopped, the vulnerability in his voice breaking her heart. I don't know how to love you without destroying you. Then let me help you figure it out, Jordan said. Let me tell you when your protection crosses into control. Let me push back when your possessiveness becomes suffocating. Let me… She stopped, finding the right words. Let me be strong enough to handle your catastrophic love instead of you trying to soften it into something safer. You want me to love you catastrophically, Maxwell said slowly, like testing the words. I want you to love me honestly, Jordan corrected. Which means loving me the way you're built to love. Intense, possessive, all-consuming, but also listening when I say it's too much. Adjusting when I need space. Learning the difference between protective control and toxic control. This moment would define everything that came after. My mother couldn't do that, Maxwell said quietly. Couldn't handle my father's intensity. Couldn't push back without breaking. Couldn't… I'm not your mother, Jordan said firmly. I'm stronger than she was. Or maybe just broken in different ways. Ways that fit with your particular brand of intensity. Ways that make your catastrophic love feel like safety instead of suffocation. Maxwell stared at her for a long moment. You really believe that? That we can make this work? That my father was wrong? I believe your father was describing love without balance, Jordan said. Love where one person consumes and the other is consumed. But we're not that. We're two people who are equally intense, equally possessive, equally all in. You're not consuming me, Maxwell. We're consuming each other, and that makes all the difference. We're consuming each other, Maxwell repeated, testing the concept. So when I'm possessive, I like it, Jordan finished. Makes me feel chosen. valued. Like I matter enough to you that you'd wage war to keep me. That's not toxic unless I'm telling you to stop and you're not listening. But I'm not. I'm leaning in. I'm matching your intensity. I'm being equally possessive right back. You are possessive, Maxwell realized, something like wonder in his voice. You tore up your severance package. You refused to leave despite the danger. You sat across from Ren Foster and claimed me as yours. You're not being consumed, you're actively consuming me right back. Exactly, Jordan said. So stop trying to protect me from your nature. Stop trying to soften your intensity into something manageable. She moved closer, eliminating space between them. Just love me catastrophically, completely, possessively. And trust that I'm strong enough to handle it. Trust that I'm broken in ways that fit perfectly with your particular brand of damaged. In that instant, everything he thought he knew changed. Maxwell pulled her against his chest with enough force to steal her breath, his arms wrapping around her like he could physically merge them into one person. You're either the bravest woman I've ever met, or the most damaged. Both, Jordan said against his shirt. Definitely both. He laughed shaky, raw, relieved. My father was wrong. He was wrong about Ford men destroying what they love. We only destroy it when we love alone, when there's no one strong enough to love us back with equal intensity. And I'm strong enough, Jordan said. You're strong enough, Maxwell agreed. He pulled back just enough to look at her face, his hands framing it with devastating gentleness. Last chance, Jordan. After this moment, we're past the point of no return. After this, I stop trying to push you away for your protection. Stop trying to soften my intensity. Stop trying to love you anyway except exactly how I'm built to love you catastrophically, possessively, permanently. Good, Jordan said, because I'm tired of you holding back, tired of you trying to be something safer. I want all of you, Maxwell, even the catastrophic parts, especially the catastrophic parts. Maxwell's expression shifted, the last of his restraint crumbling. Then you have me. All of me. Completely. Starting now. He kissed her with an intensity that proved every word about catastrophic love true. Consumed her right there on the park bench where his father had warned him about loving too much. Proved that Ford men loving catastrophically wasn't a curse. It was only destructive when the person being loved wasn't built to handle it, match it, return it with equal force. For the first time, he let himself believe forever was possible. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Maxwell rested his forehead against hers. We should go home. Your home or our home? Jordan asked. Our home, Maxwell corrected. Together, forever, completely. No contingencies, Jordan added. No contingencies, Maxwell agreed. They drove back to the mansion in silence again. But this time Jordan's hand stayed locked with Maxwell's because she wanted to, not because he needed reassurance. This time the connection felt mutual, both of them choosing contact, choosing closeness, choosing each other with full knowledge of what that choice meant. When they pulled through the gates, Jordan looked up at the massive building that had been her workplace for 18 months and was now her home. Everything's different now. Everything's different now, Maxwell agreed. Tomorrow, we make it official. Tomorrow, everyone knows exactly what you are to me. No more questions. No more ambiguity. Just, he stopped, searching for words. Just us, permanent, visible, together. How do we make it official? Jordan asked. Maxwell's smile was dark, possessive, absolutely certain. We'll figure that out tonight, together, the way partners do. And Jordan, looking at this complicated, dangerous, catastrophically loving man who'd chosen her as completely as she'd chosen him, couldn't wait. Maxwell didn't touch her on the walk from the car to the house. Didn't take her hand. Didn't guide her with that possessive palm at the small of her back. Didn't make contact at all. The absence felt deliberate, like he was holding himself back from something he'd been restraining for too long. When they reached the foyer, he finally stopped, turning to face her with an expression that made Jordan's breath catch. I need to ask you something, Maxwell said. And I need you to answer honestly, even if you think the answer will hurt me. Okay, Jordan said carefully. He was about to cross a line he could never uncross. Do you feel trapped? Maxwell asked. By this situation we've created. By the public claiming I did yesterday in front of my associates. By the meeting with Ren where I refused to let you sign something that gave you an out. By my refusal to plan for us ending. Do you feel... He stopped, jaw clenching. Do you feel like you have no choice but to stay because walking away is too complicated now? Jordan considered the question carefully. Do you want the diplomatic answer or the honest one? Honest, Maxwell said immediately. Always honest. Then yes, Jordan admitted. Sometimes I feel trapped. Sometimes I wonder if I could actually leave if I wanted to. Sometimes I think about how much easier my life would be if I'd just taken your severance package and started over somewhere safe. Maxwell's expression shuddered, pain flashing across his face before he could hide it. But, Jordan continued, stepping closer, I don't want easy. I don't want safe. I don't want the version of my life where I walked away from you because it was the rational choice. So yes, sometimes I feel trapped. But I chose the trap. I walked into it with full knowledge, and I'm choosing to stay in it every single day. That's not, Maxwell stopped himself. That's not the reassurance I was hoping for. You asked for honest, Jordan reminded him. You didn't ask for comfortable. Honest is that your love feels like a trap sometimes. Like something I can't escape even if I wanted to. Like something that's consumed so much of me that leaving would mean losing parts of myself I can't get back. What she said next shattered every wall he had left. She moved closer, eliminating the space between them. But here's the thing you need to understand, Maxwell. I like the trap. I like feeling consumed. I like knowing that leaving isn't actually an option because you'd move heaven and earth to keep me. I like your catastrophic love specifically because it doesn't give me room to sabotage this out of fear or doubt or the belief that I don't deserve it. Maxwell's hands came up to frame her face, his touch gentle despite the intensity in his eyes. You're saying you want to be trapped. I'm saying I want to be chosen so completely that leaving isn't a realistic option, Jordan clarified. I want to be loved so catastrophically that walking away would require me to literally rebuild my entire life. I want... She stopped, finding the words. I want your intensity, your possessiveness, your refusal to let me go, because that's what makes me feel safe, ironically enough. That's fucked up, Maxwell said quietly. We're fucked up, Jordan corrected, together, in ways that fit, in ways that make sense to no one except us. In ways that mean your catastrophic love doesn't destroy me. It protects me. From myself. From my tendency to run when things get too good. From my belief that I don't deserve to be chosen. Maxwell was silent for a long moment, his thumbs tracing patterns on her cheekbones. I don't know how to love any other way. Don't know how to want you without consuming you. Don't know how to keep you without trapping you. Then don't try, Jordan said. Don't try to be different. Don't try to soften what you are. Just... She pulled his face down to hers. Just love me completely, possessively, catastrophically, permanently, and trust that I want exactly that. Even knowing it means you can't leave? Maxwell asked. Especially knowing I can't leave, Jordan replied. This was the moment everything changed forever. Something in Maxwell's expression cracked the last of his restraint shattering. He pulled her against him with enough force to lift her feet off the ground, his mouth claiming hers with an intensity that proved every word about catastrophic love true. He carried her up the stairs without breaking the kiss, navigating by memory alone, taking her not to the guest room where her things had been, but to his room, the primary suite she'd cleaned for 18 months without ever actually entering as anything other than staff. The door closed behind them with quiet finality. Maxwell set her down, his hands immediately moving to her dress, fingers finding the zipper with practiced efficiency. Tell me to stop, he said against her mouth. Tell me this is too fast, too intense, too much. Tell me you need time to think. Tell me. Don't stop, Jordan interrupted. Don't slow down. Don't give me time to overthink this. Just... Her dress fell to the floor. Just show me what catastrophic love looks like when you stop holding back. Maxwell's control shattered completely. He consumed her the way he'd been restraining himself from doing for 18 months, possessive and intense and absolutely certain. Proved that Ford men loving catastrophically wasn't a warning but a promise. Showed her exactly what it meant to be chosen so completely that leaving stopped being an option. He'd never felt power like this before. Later, hours later, they lay tangled in sheets that felt different now. Weighted with significance that changed everything. Maxwell's hand traced patterns on Jordan's spine, his touch possessive even in the aftermath. Tomorrow, he said quietly. Tomorrow. We make this official, in the only way that matters in my world. How? Jordan asked against his chest. I take you to Romano's, Maxwell said. The restaurant where I meet with my closest associates every Wednesday morning. Where I conduct business. Where anyone who matters in my organization knows they can find me. And I seat you beside me in the position that's typically left empty, the position reserved for no one because I've never had anyone worth reserving it for. He pulled back just enough to look at her face. And then I introduce you. Not as my household manager. Not as someone who works for me, but as my partner. He stopped, searching for words. As the person who has approval authority over everything in my life. As the person whose safety takes priority over every business decision. As the person who is permanent. That's a lot of pressure, Jordan whispered. Tomorrow, the entire city would know she belonged to him. That's the point, Maxwell said. I want pressure, want commitment, want everyone to understand that you're not temporary, not casual, not someone I'm seeing casually. You're mine, permanently, publicly, in every way that matters in my world. And if your associates don't accept me, Jordan asked, if they think I'm a liability? Then they're not my associates anymore, Maxwell interrupted. I'm not negotiating on this, Jordan. I'm not asking permission. I'm informing them of reality, that you're permanent, that you have authority, that respecting me means respecting you. Jordan was quiet for a moment. This is it, isn't it? The point of no return you mentioned. Once you do this, I can't just fade back into invisibility. Once I do this, you become as visible as I am, Maxwell corrected. Which means you become as vulnerable to my enemies as I am. Which means you need to be absolutely certain this is what you want. Because I can protect you, Jordan. I can eliminate threats. I can wage war against anyone who targets you. But I can't make you invisible again once everyone knows what you mean to me. I'm certain, Jordan said. Terrified but certain. Good. Maxwell pulled her closer, his body curving around hers protectively. Because tomorrow, everything changes. Tomorrow, there's no going back. Tomorrow's too late, Jordan interrupted, echoing her words from before. You already changed everything. The moment you waited up for me after my coffee date with Bryce. The moment you told me I was yours. The moment you refused to plan for us ending. Everything already changed, Maxwell. Tomorrow just makes it official. He'd spent his whole life avoiding this, and now he'd chosen it. You're right, Maxwell admitted. Everything already changed. He stopped, vulnerability creeping into his voice. I wanted you to have one more night to change your mind. One more chance to walk away before I make this so public that leaving becomes complicated. I don't want another chance, Jordan said. I want tomorrow. I want public. I want everyone knowing I'm yours, because that means everyone also knows you're mine. Maxwell's arms tightened around her. Mine and yours. Completely. Permanently. No contingencies. No contingencies, Jordan agreed. They fell silent, but neither of them slept. Tomorrow loomed large, the public, claiming at Romano's, the reactions of Maxwell's associates, the permanent shift in Jordan's status from staff to partner. But tonight, in this bed that was now theirs instead of just his, they had each other, had made a choice that couldn't be unmade, had crossed the point of no return together. It wasn't safe, wasn't smart, wasn't anything close to the normal relationship Jordan could have chosen, but it was theirs. Catastrophic and intense, and absolutely right, and tomorrow, the entire world would know it. Romano's was exactly the kind of restaurant Maxwell would choose for business, elegant without being ostentatious, private without being suspicious, expensive enough that casual diners wouldn't wander in but not so exclusive that it drew attention. The kind of place where deals were made over espresso, where power was traded across white tablecloths, where the servers knew to be invisible and deaf. Jordan had been awake since 5 a.m., trying on and discarding outfits until Maxwell finally intervened, pulling a navy dress from her closet with the confidence of someone who understood exactly what image they needed to project. This one, he'd said. Professional but not submissive. Expensive but not flashy. Something that says you belong beside me without looking like you're trying to belong beside me. Now, walking into Romano's at exactly 8 a.m. with Maxwell's hand at the small of her back, Jordan understood why the outfit mattered. Every person in the restaurant turned to look at them. Every conversation stopped mid-sentence. Every eye tracked their movement toward the private alcove in the back where Maxwell always sat. This would be the moment that changed everything. The table was already half full, 8 men in expensive suits, ranging in age from late 30s to mid-60s, all watching with varying degrees of curiosity and calculation. Jordan recognized some of them. Preston Cole, Maxwell's second in command. Elias Scott, who managed the legitimate business operations. Others she'd seen around the mansion but never been introduced to properly. They all stood when Maxwell approached. Respect or intimidation? Jordan couldn't tell. Gentlemen, Maxwell said, his voice carrying authority that made Jordan's spine straighten instinctively. This is Jordan Gray. She's my partner. In every sense that matters. No preamble. No explanation. Just declaration. Maxwell pulled out the chair to his right. The position she now understood was significant. The position that had been empty at every meeting. The position reserved for no one because Maxwell had never had anyone worth reserving it for. Jordan sat, hyper-aware of 8 sets of eyes assessing her with the skill of men who'd survived in Maxwell's organization through careful observation. Jordan, Maxwell continued, settling into his own chair with the casual authority of someone who owned not just the table but the entire restaurant, is not a guest, not temporary, not someone who's here for one meeting. She's permanent. She has approval authority over everything that affects me, which means everything that affects this organization. Any business that requires my decision requires her approval as well. They had no idea what they were about to witness. Silence. Complete, absolute silence. Then Preston Cole spoke, his voice carefully neutral. You're saying Jordan has veto power over organizational decisions. I'm saying Jordan is my partner, Maxwell corrected. Which means her safety, her comfort, her approval, all take priority over business efficiency. Which means if a deal makes her uncomfortable, we don't do the deal. If a situation puts her at risk, we eliminate the situation. If an associate disrespects her, that associate finds new employment. More silence. Jordan could feel the weight of it, not hostility exactly, but assessment. These men were calculating what her presence meant, what power she actually held, whether Maxwell was serious or going through some temporary phase that would pass. Any questions? Maxwell asked, his tone making it very clear that questions were not actually welcome. Just one, said a man Jordan didn't recognize, older, weathered, with eyes that had seen things that would give her nightmares. What happens if we have a problem with this arrangement? Then you leave, Maxwell said simply. Today. Now. With severance and my thanks for your years of service. But you leave understanding that Jordan is non-negotiable. This isn't a trial period. This isn't me asking for your approval. This is me informing you of reality. The older man studied Jordan with unsettling intensity. Then he smiled genuine, almost amused. No problem then. Welcome to the family, Jordan. The room held its breath. One by one, the other men echoed the sentiment. Some genuine, some clearly strategic, all of them understanding that refusing meant ending their association with the most powerful organization in the city. Except one. Bryce Knight, the man who'd invited Jordan to coffee, the catalyst for everything that followed, stood from his position at the far end of the table. I have a problem with this arrangement. Every person in the alcove went still. Explain, Maxwell said, his voice dropping to that particular quietness that preceded violence. With respect, Maxwell, this decision compromises operational security, Bryce said carefully. Jordan has access to sensitive information. She knows your schedule, your security protocols, your personal vulnerabilities. And while I'm sure your relationship is, he paused, currently stable, relationships end. And when they end badly. You're creating a vulnerability we can't protect against. Are you done? Maxwell asked. I'm saying what everyone else is thinking, Bryce replied. That you're letting emotion compromise judgment. That you're making Jordan a target by declaring her important. That you're resigning, Maxwell interrupted. You're resigning. Effective immediately. Preston will handle your severance package. You'll vacate your apartment by end of business today. And you'll understand that any attempt to contact Jordan, to share information about this organization, or to leverage your previous position, will be met with immediate and permanent consequences. This was only the beginning of a much bigger war. Bryce's jaw tightened. You're firing me for expressing legitimate operational concerns. I'm accepting your resignation, Maxwell corrected, because you just made it very clear that you can't work in an organization where Jordan has authority. Which means you can't work in my organization. So we're done. Leave. For a moment, Jordan thought Bryce might argue, might push back, might try to convince the other associates that Maxwell was making a mistake. But then Preston Cole stood, moving to flank Bryce with the casual efficiency of someone who'd handled similar situations before. Come on, Bryce. Let's handle the paperwork in private. Bryce left, Preston following, the door closing behind them with quiet finality. The remaining 7 associates sat in heavy silence. Then Maxwell spoke, his attention focused on Jordan. Anyone else have concerns they'd like to voice? Any other doubts about Jordan's permanent position in this organization? Any other questions about her authority? Silence. Good, Maxwell said. Then we're agreed. Jordan is my partner, permanently. Any threats to this organization are threats to her. Any disrespect to her is disrespect to me. Any business decisions that affect my life affect her life. This isn't negotiable. This isn't temporary. This is reality. Questions? Just one, Elias Scott said, his tone more curious than challenging. How do we address her? Jordan? Miss Gray? Mrs. Ford? Maxwell's hand found Jordan's under the table, squeezing once. Jordan works fine. She's not my employee. She's not my subordinate. She's my partner. Treat her accordingly. He'd just rewritten the rules and everyone knew it. Understood, Elias said. The other associates nodded, filing away this new reality for future reference. The meeting continued discussions of business Jordan barely understood, mentions of deals and territories and complications that would take her months to fully comprehend. But nobody questioned her presence. Nobody suggested she leave for sensitive conversations. Nobody treated her like the household manager she'd been just days ago. At one point, Maxwell turned to her during a discussion about expanding territory to the east. Thoughts? Jordan's heart hammered. I don't know enough to have thoughts. Then we table it until you do, Maxwell said simply, turning back to the associates. Send Jordan the briefing documents. We'll revisit next week once she's up to speed. And just like that, organizational decisions were waiting on her education. Just like that, she had actual authority that affected actual business. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. The meeting ended at 9:30 a.m. The associates filed out with backward glances that promised this story would spread through every level of the organization within hours. Maxwell's hand never left Jordan's back as they walked through the restaurant, past servers who'd witnessed the entire thing, past other diners who'd pretended not to notice but absolutely had. When they reached the car, Jordan finally let out the breath she'd been holding. That was necessary, Maxwell finished. Everyone needed to see that you're permanent, that you have authority, that disrespecting you means leaving the organization. Bryce needed to understand that his concerns, legitimate or not, don't override my choice to make you visible. For the first time, he'd chosen love over power, and won both. You fired him, Jordan said. One of your most trusted associates. Because he questioned our relationship. I accepted his resignation, Maxwell corrected. Because he made it clear he couldn't accept you having authority, which meant he couldn't stay in my organization. Simple as that. Nothing about this is simple, Jordan said. No, Maxwell agreed, turning to face her fully. But it's done. You're officially, publicly, permanently my partner. Everyone who matters knows it. Everyone who doesn't matter will know it by tomorrow. And anyone who has a problem with it can follow Bryce's example and leave. He pulled her against his chest, his arms wrapping around her with familiar strength. How do you feel? Terrified, Jordan admitted. 7 men just watched you declare that I have authority over their business decisions. They're not going to accept that easily. They're going to test me. They're going to respect you, Maxwell interrupted. Because disrespecting you means disrespecting me. And they know better than to do that. But yes, they'll test you. They'll push boundaries. They'll try to figure out how much authority you actually have versus how much is just show. And when they do, you handle it the way you handled Ren Foster. With confidence, with clarity, with the absolute certainty that you belong beside me. What if I don't? Jordan asked quietly. What if I can't handle your world? What if 6 months from now I'm drowning and you're so deep into this public claiming that admitting I can't do it feels impossible? This moment defined everything that came after. Maxwell pulled back to look at her face. Then you tell me. You say, Maxwell, this is too much. And we figure it out together. We adjust. We find the balance between what the organization needs and what you can handle. He stopped, finding the words. We remember that you're more important than the business. Always. Even if it means restructuring everything to accommodate your limits. You'd really do that? Jordan asked. You'd really choose me over the organization? Every single time, Maxwell said. Without hesitation. The business exists to support my life, not the other way around. And you're my life now, Jordan. So yes, if choosing you means changing how I run things, I change how I run things. If choosing you means losing associates who can't accept your authority, I lose those associates. If choosing you means, Jordan kissed him, cutting off the words with action, proved that catastrophic love worked both ways, that she'd choose him with the same intensity, the same certainty, the same absolute commitment. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Maxwell rested his forehead against hers. We should go home, We should, Jordan agreed, but neither of them moved. Romano's will be empty in 30 minutes, Maxwell said quietly. Staff will start closing down the private areas. We could. Maxwell Ford, are you suggesting we stay? And Jordan stopped, laughing despite everything. We just made me permanently, publicly visible to your entire organization. We should celebrate appropriately. We should, Maxwell agreed, his smile dark and possessive and absolutely certain. They stayed in the car in Romano's parking lot for another 20 minutes, not doing anything inappropriate, just sitting together, processing what had just happened. The public claiming Bryce's resignation, the moment when Maxwell had chosen her authority over organizational stability without hesitation. From here on, nothing would ever be the same. You know what the scariest part is? Jordan asked finally. What? I liked it, she admitted. I liked sitting at that table. Liked being introduced as your partner. Liked watching you fire Bryce for questioning my authority. I liked. She stopped, finding the words. I liked being claimed publicly, being visible, being permanent, which means I'm exactly as broken as you are, or exactly as whole as I am. Maxwell corrected. Maybe we're not broken, Jordan. Maybe we're just intense. Maybe we're just people who love catastrophically and need partners who can handle that intensity without breaking. Maybe, Jordan agreed. They drove home in comfortable silence, hands locked together, both of them processing the permanent shift that had just occurred. By noon, everyone in Maxwell's organization would know about Jordan's promotion from household manager to partner. By evening, every rival organization would be assessing what her visibility meant, what vulnerabilities it created, how it might be exploited. But they'd also know that threatening Jordan meant war. That Maxwell had chosen her publicly, permanently, with full knowledge of the strategic complications it created. That she wasn't a secret to be protected or a weakness to be hidden. She was his partner, visible, permanent, protected by the full force of his organization. When they pulled through the mansion gates, Jordan looked up at the building that had been her workplace, then her home, and was now the headquarters of her partnership with the most dangerous man she'd ever met. It's really done, isn't it? She asked. No going back, no second guessing, no waking up tomorrow and deciding this was a mistake. It's really done, Maxwell confirmed. You're mine. I'm yours. Everyone knows it. And anyone who has a problem with it can, he smiled, dark and satisfied, can find new employment. And somehow, against all odds, they'd found forever. Jordan turned to look at him, this complicated, dangerous, catastrophically loving man who'd chosen her as completely as she'd chosen him. What now? Now? Maxwell pulled her across the console and into his lap, his arms wrapping around her with familiar possessiveness. Now we live, we work, we build a life together that makes sense to no one except us. We love each other catastrophically and trust that we're both strong enough to handle it. We choose each other, Jordan interrupted. Every single day, permanently, no contingencies. No contingencies, Maxwell agreed. And sitting there in his car, in front of the mansion that was now their home, having just made their relationship permanently, publicly, irrevocably official, Jordan finally understood what Maxwell's father had gotten wrong about Ford men loving catastrophically. It was only destructive when it was one-sided, when one person consumed and the other was consumed. But when both people loved with equal intensity, equal possessiveness, equal catastrophic certainty, then it wasn't destruction, it was completion. And Jordan, looking at Maxwell Ford, Mafia Boss, possessive bastard, the man who'd wage war to keep her safe, knew she'd found exactly that. I love you, she said. Catastrophically, permanently, no contingencies. Maxwell's smile was brilliant, unguarded, absolutely certain. I love you too, now and always, forever. And in that moment, sitting in his car with his arms around her and their future spreading out before them, dangerous and complicated and absolutely theirs, Jordan finally felt like she'd come home. Not to the mansion, not to the money or the power or the world Maxwell inhabited, but to him, to them, to the catastrophic love they'd chosen together, forever.